a pit stop for all things NASCAR with the Four Tire Change podcast. Here is your host, Dawson Iserlo.
The Four Tire Change podcast returns. Dawson Iserlo with you here to recap a very busy first month plus of this NASCAR Cup Series season. Appreciate you for joining us. So, the last time we talked to you was around the Daytona 500. Obviously Tyler Reddick went on and did something that was that's never been done before. And for Tyler Reddick to win 3 consecutive races to start the NASCAR Cup Series season, unbelievable. So really quick here on this episode, we're going to run through kind of where the standings sit. We're not going to get too far into them. Obviously, it's just a handful of races. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about who's maybe surprised us, who maybe needs to figure some things out. And we'll take a look at the upcoming schedule a little bit because I think there's some things we're going to learn here in the near future. So we'll start off with what Tyler Reddick accomplished. Winning the first 3 races of the season. It's one of those stats in NASCAR history that feels like it should have happened before, right? We had an era of NASCAR where some of the best cars were dominant because they weren't even really running the same equipment, right? I'm talking way back in the 70s and 80s and those times. So you figure somebody would have won the first 3 races, right? It's never actually happened until Tyler pulled it off to start this season. Additionally, aside from that, you think about even in the modern era, the Dale Earnhardts, the Jeff Gordons, the Jimmy Johnsons, like somebody would have pulled this off, right? No. And where he did it, the way the schedule set up for NASCAR this year, I think was perhaps the most improbable way to do it the sport could have seen. We know how unpredictable the super speedways are right now. He starts it off with Daytona. You go, all right, he gets that one. Goes to Atlanta. Now, the one thing that was working in his favor in Atlanta is starting at the front because of the qualifying being canceled, whatever. But still, to run up front all day and win in Atlanta when you had just about as little a chance as you did at Daytona, really unbelievable. And then to top it all off, going to Circuit of the Americas, beating Shane Van Gisbergen, who's dominated the road courses. Now, I know Coda's maybe not the one that he dominates as many as the other ones, but just incredible stuff. What Tyler Reddick accomplished is truly, I think, without question, regardless of how he finishes the season and if he wins a championship or if he fades and never wins another race all year long, it is one of the most remarkable accomplishments in the history of the sport. And of course, Michael Jordan being there, getting interviewed and all that stuff, is that good for the popularity of NASCAR? Yes. Do some NASCAR purists want a Michael Jordan interview after every single race? I'm sure they don't. But I think a lot of people just understand Jordan's one of those names. This is not a B-list celebrity. This is Michael Jordan at the end of the day. One of the biggest names in the sport's history. Literally. I mean, Michael Jordan is you could make an argument, I've thought about this before, if you put a Mount Rushmore of just sport figures of all sports combined, Jordan's probably on most people's Mount Rushmore. So him getting some more TV time is good for the publicity of the sport, and we know NASCAR is obviously in an effort to grow and continue their growth at this point in its, and where it is right now. Taking a look at some of the other really impressive accomplishments, I got to give a shout out to Shane Van Gisbergen. The second place at Coda, yeah, that doesn't surprise us. We knew that. Runs right near the top 10 all day at Phoenix. Had some good runs at both Daytona and Atlanta. Shane Van Gisbergen's 5th in the standings right now. We've only raced one road course. Now, have we had some variable tracks that give you some, I guess, random results at Daytona and Atlanta? Sure. So, it's not a true indicator that he's going to be running 5th all season long, and I don't think he's going to be. But impressive job. We're seeing the improvement on the ovals already for Shane Van Gisbergen. And I think as long as that continues, we know what he's going to do on the road courses. We know the kind of talent that he has as a driver in general. This could be a guy who's around a while, man. I don't think this is just a fling. I think Shane Van Gisbergen's going to have a chance to become a contender in the NASCAR Cup Series before too long. Considering all that, and you take a look at some of the other names up there, look, Bubba Wallace running 3rd, so obviously the 2311 team's just been firing on all cylinders when you take a look at Reddick in the lead, and he's 60 points clear of 2nd. But how about Ryan Blaney coming back at Phoenix last week, getting a big win for his team? There's always been this feeling, I think, that Blaney has some untapped potential, I think. And this goes for a lot of the guys that are, kind of those golfers, those golfers, where did that come from? These NASCAR drivers who are near the top of the sport, but maybe don't grab that top spot as being the unquestioned best driver or one of the handful of best drivers. So I think we think about that with Blaney. I think about it with Chase Elliott, of course. I think about it with William Byron. And, with Blaney and Elliott, we're talking about champions of the sport. But do they get to that next tier where you're talking about multi-time champions, you're talking about perennial contenders? Big win for Blaney just to start the season off, get the things going in the right direction for him. And he's also 2nd in points, so he's been consistent along with the early success. The guys I'm really worried about, now look, you could take it's 5 races in. or 4 races in. You could take a look at some of the guys at the top of the standings and at the bottom of the standings and clearly pick some that you think are going to go one direction or the other. Look, Alex Bowman being out with injury now for a handful of races in this format, I mean, I don't want to say it's all but over, but it really kind of, you can't do this. In the previous format, as long as you got a waiver, if you missed a race with an injury, you'd be okay. Hey, I'll be back in the playoffs. Yeah, I'll miss out on those playoff points or, maybe those standings points that could have led to playoff points, but I'll be fine. In this format, man, it is tough. We've talked about this a little bit in the past. You're going to need to finish, it feels like, top 5 in the regular season standings to feel like you got a fair shot in the chase. Now, if you go nuclear and you win 4 races in the chase, then yeah, maybe you'll win it from 8th or 9th. But it's going to be tough to do. And so a guy like Alex Bowman's now really against the 8 ball. And we find out, by the way, he's going to be out again this week. Justin Allgaier is going to pilot the number 48 car for Las Vegas Motor Speedway. So that's obviously one that goes without saying. Kyle Busch, I think, we're wondering kind of what this RCR Kyle Busch relationship is going to look like in the future. It has not been pretty to start the season. It's not like RCR's had a ton of speed aside from him. I mean, Austin Dillon hasn't been too much better, but definitely some problems with the number 8 team right now, and I don't know if it's going to get a whole lot better. So that one's one that really alarms me. What Brad Keselowski's been doing, by the way, with the broken leg, I mean, look, it's not pretty when he's hobbling around the tracks with a cane, but when he gets in the race car, he's been able to right the ship. And I'll tell you, somebody else I've been impressed with early on in the season is Ryan Preece. I think that 60 team's done a nice job. RFK in general really has had a solid start to the season. I'm not worried about any of your heavy hitters like a Larson, like an Elliott. You got a couple DNFs for some of the big guys. That's going to factor in. I saw, you had the streak. Larson runs well at Phoenix, but there was that stretch where he didn't have any top 5s to start the year. That hadn't happened in his career in a long time. So those guys I'm not super worried about. As we get to this next part of the season, this is what I'm excited about. We're going to find out who the real contenders are. We're going to go to a stretch of races that includes Las Vegas. It includes Darlington. It includes Bristol. It includes Kansas. The next month plus of the NASCAR Cup Series schedule are going to tell us who has the speed consistently week in, week out at those mile-and-a-half racetracks to win races, to run in the top 5, and to gather up all those points that are going to be so necessary if you want to win a regular season championship, if you want to be around for the chase, and if you want to have ideas of winning the chase as well. Keep in mind, to that same exact point, Tyler Reddick has a big lead. He's done a great job. He's maybe bought himself, and I've heard this terminology, he's bought himself some mulligans, right? If they don't bring the best car to the track, maybe they get caught up in an incident in one of these places, he can afford a bad finish or two, right? Because he's done so well in the first part of the season. But let's see if Reddick really has the speed week in, week out to be the guy that everybody's chasing. Or maybe he had a couple of great runs. That's the weird thing about winning the first 3 races, as I said. As incredible an accomplishment it is, it doesn't necessarily tell us that the 23-11 team has hit on something that's going to help them all year long. Because we're going to go to some different tracks, and winning at Daytona, Atlanta, and COTA is not going to help you necessarily, other than confidence, at Las Vegas and Darlington and Kansas and Bristol. So I'm definitely interested to see how it's going to play out. But what an exciting start to the season. I think there's been some good buzz with NASCAR. We're going to be hitting you with these videos, probably make them a little bit more frequent as the year gets fully going and we're kind of up on our feet, crossover season comes to a close. But that'll do it for this episode of 4 Tire Change. Continue to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy what you're seeing, and we'll continue to break it all down for you. NASCAR Cup Series updates all year long here on the 4 Tire Change podcast from ESPN, Southwest Louisiana.